thank you first and foremost for taking the right steps in getting a license in this new and innovative license. But before we get started, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Ed Tumlos. I'm the Assistant Commissioner for the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection's Neighborhood Business Development Centers program. And I'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end so that you'll know about the resources that are available to you as entrepreneurs in the city of Chicago. Co-hosting with me today is our Director of Food Protection from the Department of Health, Ms. Jaren Butler. So we're going to be tag teaming it because you get the benefit of not only learning about the licensing side of it, but also there is a health component to it depending if you're going to be selling food. So let's get started. Now, also too, before we continue, we are not going to be handing out this presentation. However, the crux of the content of this presentation are in the two handouts, one for each license type, the PopUp User and the PopUp Host. So hopefully you've all picked one up. It is also available online on our dedicated webpage for PopUp licensing. And also we ask that if you can hold off on your questions if you can. Hopefully we'll answer most, if not all of your questions throughout the presentation. If there is something specific within a slide that you gotta ask, feel free, just say, hey Ed, I got a quick question. But hopefully, we'll answer most of it. And also too, we've set in some time for a Q&A afterwards at the end of the presentation, okay? So let's begin. On December 1st, of last year, a new pop-up ordinance went into effect. And what did it entail? What it essentially created was a new or two new business license types. That is for the PopUp User and the PopUp Host. Essentially, the PopUp User is the retail and food entrepreneur license that will allow you to be able to perform short-term business activities in a commercial location. Also, the other license type allows the commercial kitchen property owners to obtain a short-term business license to host retail and food entrepreneurs. So throughout this presentation, you'll see that we'll be referring to both types because basically as we note a specific user type, that user type can then utilize a specific host type, okay? And we've divided the presentation up as such as well. So what are we covering? First and foremost, we'll talk about the PopUp retail and food establishment user license types. Then we'll talk about the PopUp user license application and Department of Health requirements. After we've done that, we'll talk about the PopUp food establishment host license types, and then also talk about the host license application and health requirements. Then at the end, we'll summarize the various licenses so that you'll get the gist of it, because basically there's going to be a lot to be covered, and hopefully we don't confuse you. But again, it will all make sense towards the end. And then lastly, once and if you are ready to apply, we'll tell you how to do so. And then we'll do the Q&A at the end. So what are the different types of PopUp user licenses? Well, there's the PopUp retail user. There's the PopUp food establishment user, Tier 1, and there's the Tier 2 and Tier 3. Now, let's do a deep dive. On the first license type, which is the PopUp retail user, it really is actually, has been in existence for a bit. It's our current itinerant merchants that was renamed as PopUp retail user. What this allows the licensee to do is to occupy or lease for up to 1 year or less a fixed indoor retail space for the sale of merchandise or provision of services including but not limited to seasonal stores, estate sales, trade shows, or exhibitions. Occupies or leases for 1 year or less a fixed outdoor retail space for the sale of merchandise, provision of services, including but not limited to the pumpkin patches that you see out there, as well as the Christmas tree lots. And then lastly, for those who are organizing or sponsors a trade show or exhibition. The license terms are such. There are 5-day term with a fee of $25. There's the 30-day term for $50, the 90-day term for $75, 180 days for $100, and the 1 year for $150. So essentially, if you're just going to be selling merchandise at a pop-up location, this is the license for you. Now, if you happen to be selling a pre-packaged good that is non-perishable food item, then you're going to be needing the Pop-Up Food Establishment User Tier 1 license. Essentially, the holder of the Tier 1 license is entitled to sell or offer non-perishable food only that is commercially pre-packaged in a properly licensed establishment. On-site food preparation or on-site dining is not allowed under a Tier 1 license, excuse me. And the Pop-Up Food Establishment User Tier 1 may pop up in any non-manufacturing and non-residential location. In actuality, a host does not even need to obtain a business license to allow a Pop-Up Food Establishment User Tier 1, and also too for the retail sales. Also, a shared kitchen user, business license holders, they are exempt from getting this license because basically what they're doing already, their current license allows them to do so, and we merely are just going to add that business activity in your business license. So is anybody actually right now a licensed shared kitchen user? Great. And have you used it already? Not yet? Okay. Have you used yours? Okay. And what's unique about that license, it allows you to utilize any shared kitchen in the city of Chicago. What's even more unique now and what's more innovative actually with our new pop-up license, which by the way is the first of its kind in the nation, is that these licenses aren't tied to a specific location. You can pop up anywhere in the city of Chicago. And do keep that in mind, that when you obtain a city of Chicago license, it's only good in the city of Chicago. And conversely, licenses from other municipalities are no good here. So do keep that in mind. So if you're interested in a Pop-Up Food Establishment User Tier 1, the license term is the same as the retail sales pop-up, and that is 5 days is for $25, 30 days is for $50, 90 days is $75, 180 days is $100, and the 1 year license is at $150. The next pop-up food establishment user type is Tier 2. And in addition to selling or serving food authorized under the Tier 1 license, the holder of a Tier 2 license is entitled to sell or serve any combination of perishable and non-perishable, hot or cold prepackaged food that has been prepared and packaged or stored off-site in a licensed shared kitchen or shared kitchen supplemental. Final on-site preparation involving minimal assembly is allowed, and on-site dining is allowed under a Tier 2 license. Another benefit of this license is that they may pop up in a licensed establishment holding a Tier 2 or Tier 3 pop-up establishment host license, which we'll explain more a little bit later, or anybody who currently has a retail food license, basically a restaurant with a shared kitchen supplemental license, or a current licensed shared kitchen operator. Okay? Again, the shared kitchen user who is currently licensed does not need to obtain this business license because it is already encompassed within their existing license. And the last pop-up food establishment user license is the Tier 3 license. The Tier 3, in addition to selling or serving food that's authorized under Tier 1 and Tier 2, the holder of Tier 3 license is entitled to sell or serve perishable, non-perishable, hot and cold food prepared on-site at the pop-up food establishment. So essentially, this is like a restaurant, okay? The holder of the Tier 3 license is authorized to operate as a full-service restaurant, as I just mentioned. And of course, on-site dining is allowed under Tier 3 license. So the pop-up Tier 3 food establishment user license may pop up in a licensed establishment again, holding a Tier 3 pop-up establishment host license, or a retail food licensed establishment with a shared kitchen supplemental, and then also a shared kitchen operator license. Okay? And as a reminder, a shared kitchen user and a retail food business license holder are exempt from having to obtain this license. So if either one of those two existing licensed individuals or businesses have the shared kitchen user or retail food business license already, they do not need to obtain the pop-up food establishment user Tier 3 license to be able to conduct these activities. Okay? Now, let's say that you're ready to apply for this business license. What are our business consultants, who, by the way, you may see free of charge at any time? You may consult with them if you have any additional questions prior to getting licensed. But essentially, if and when you are ready, the first thing that they're going to ask you to do is to complete what's called a business information sheet. The BIS form is a pre-application form, which will ask for the full name of the applicant, as well as their current residential address, their business address, their email, telephone number, date of birth, and social security number. It's a standard form that we ask of all of our licensees, applicants. We're also going to be asking for your government-issued photo ID, a valid one, of course, from all applicants, owners, and business entity controlling persons and registered agents. As part of the license application process, we're going to ask for your business ID number or your registration numbers. The assumption is that you've already registered your business prior to coming here. And it's a common misnomer for some who think that just because that, say for example, you've incorporated, right? Or you formed an LLC, that you can now conduct business in the city of Chicago. That is not true. Registering your business does not mean that you've obtained a business license. Obtaining a business license is only through here at our Small Business Center. We're the only business licensing agency in the city of Chicago. So until you obtain the business license, you may not operate. So the assumption is that before you come to apply, you've already registered your business. And then if you haven't done so already, we have a handout for you. And if you didn't get a chance to pick it up already, the 3 simple steps to obtain a business license. The first step is actually trying to figure out what your legal entity will be if you haven't done so already. If you haven't, you can either research it for yourself or consult with an attorney or an accountant. And then after that is actually registering it so that it'll be recognized as an official business. Once you've done that, that's when you come in and apply for the business license. Okay? So all the steps are in here, and all the agency's information, contact information is here, so that if and when you're ready to do so, you may go ahead and complete the pre-application steps that you need to perform in order for us to actually complete your business license application. Then, after you provided us with your business identification number, we also ask that you resolve any debts that you may have with the city of Chicago. Say, for example, if you have any like parking tickets and such. We can start the business license application. Unfortunately, we cannot provide you with the business license until you resolve any city debt that you may have. Now, most of our licenses require zoning, but again, this is what's unique about this license, the pop-up user license, is that they're allowed to pop up at any place in the city of Chicago, so we don't actually have to ask what's the address of the place that you're going to pop into, okay? That's what's unique about this address. So there will not be a zoning review per se. However, a pop-up user is authorized throughout the duration of the license term to pop up at the various locations that are eligible for you to pop into, okay? So do keep that in mind, that the place has to be a commercial place. You cannot pop into a residential place, Okay? So do keep that in mind. Any questions so far? No? Okay, yes.
So whose responsibility is it then to know if the host has pop-up license, the host or the business owner?
Sure, absolutely. When you, as a user, attempt to utilize a space, you obviously will need to obtain permission, as you are either going to be signing a lease and or an agreement. You are then, it is your responsibility to find out if they're licensed accordingly. Okay?
Okay.
And
That just seems,
Yes.
okay.
well, the host, if they're required to have a license, and because if there's the different license types will require certain licenses, they are required to post the license in a conspicuous place, basically, hopefully by the door. So when you walk in, you'll see their business license certificate, and you will see that they'll be licensed accordingly.
Okay. And what if your business is in another state and wants to pop up here?
Okay, you can do that,
Okay.
but you can't operate until you obtain your business license first.
I got it. Thank you.
Okay, yes.
Well, didn't they at one year say, could you go to several different places, say one place for 5 days, another place for 30 days, another place for 5?
Correct. You're allowed to pop up during the license term. So within the license term, you can pop up anywhere you want. However, there is a 90-day limitation to the pop-up food user licenses. You cannot be in one space for greater than 90 days if you have one of the pop-up food user licenses.
For retail, it doesn't matter, you can be there for 5 days, you can be there for 180 days.
Yeah, there isn't that same restriction for the retail. Okay? So, calling up now, Ms. Butler.
Good afternoon. As he was talking, I said, we are talking about a lot of stuff, and I might be a little bit confused. So what I'm going to do is try to talk about it in terms of examples. Does that work? Because I'm thinking that you guys everybody's not going, yes, I get it. So I'm going to try to talk about it in terms of examples. So if you're going to be a pop-up user, and we're going to talk about the users first. So we have two license types, the host and the user. The user is going to be the person that comes in. You have the product for sale, right? So that's the user. And when you come in to meet with our business consultant, because we have a person assigned here from the Department of Health, she will meet with you. She's going to ask you for your statement of intent. So that is going to be where you intend to go for the first time. So if you are a user, you need to go somewhere. You need to pop up into a location. When you pop up into that location, they're going to say where. She's going to look it up and see if they have pop-up host, either they're a pop-up host or they have it as part of their business activity. She's going to say, yes, you can go into that location, and you're going to have in that agreement the license number, the length time that you plan to be there. Does that make sense? So she's going to ask for that. So that's where that comes in. We're going to know it's a place where you can go. As part of the consultation, she's also going to ask you what product you plan to sell, right? And if that location meets the requirements of the product that you plan to sell, and how you plan to sell it. So she's going to ask you about the equipment that you plan to provide or the equipment that the host is going to provide, right? Because according to the ordinance, either party can be responsible for providing the equipment. It can either be the host or it can be the user for a tier 2. That make sense? And then as a user, you're not actually subject to inspection except for under these 3 circumstances. If you are in a host location, we always reserve the right to inspect any place where there's food, and you happen to be there, you can get inspected at that point. If you are part of a foodborne illness outbreak, does everybody know what that means? That means that if somebody says, I got sick because I ate your food product, and then we're going to come and do an inspection, and we're going to try to figure out what your process is and do an investigation. That make sense? All right. I got like fading. So the pop-up user must have a menu, so you got to know what product you're going to serve. If you're doing salads, for example, you want to know where the salad is going to be made. So if you're going to make the salad as a shared kitchen user, I saw some people said they were shared kitchen users. If you're a shared kitchen user, you're going to make your salad at your commissary, your shared kitchen, and then you're going to bring it to the host location where you're going to sell it to the public, right? So when you sell it to the public, how are you going to do that? It should already be prepared in a clamshell, in a container. You can do a final preparation step, add salad dressing, and then sell it to the person if you were tier 2. So that's tier 2. So we'll ask you about that. You must comply with all of the health requirements. Everybody read the food code? Have everybody read it? Okay, I know that you haven't, but you still must comply with all of the requirements of the food code. And then with regard to the equipment, as I said before, it could be something that you provide, or it could be something that the host provides. So for example, back to that tier 2, you make your salad. If you have open food product, you must wash your hands. So you are required to have a hand sink. Is that hand sink something that you're going to provide, or is that hand sink something the host is going to provide? Either party could provide that, but that should be included in the conversation that you have and the documentation that you provide. So if someone gets sick, we come out to do an inspection and there's no hand sink. What happens then?
Shut it down.
Wow, y'all went right to shut down. I was going to say, we're going to say, who's responsible for providing the hand sink? And then after we determine that, then we'll write a ticket, and then we'll shut you down. So there's some steps. The ticket goes to the person who's responsible for providing it.
Not the host.
Could be the host, could be the user who's responsible for providing it. So if the host says, I'm going to be I'm a tier 2, and I'm going to provide the hand sink, right? Then we think the host is supposed to provide the hand sink. That makes sense? Because the host said they're going to provide the hand sink. Right. And then as the user, if you said you were going to provide the hand sink, then it would be your responsibility to make sure the hand sink was there and that it worked. Now, as a user, if you're supposed to have a hand sink and you go to the place and there's no hand sink, should you still operate? No. So, sounds like you definitely need to plan accordingly. You need to maybe go check out the space before you bring all your food and make it, and make sure the hand sink is there and everything is prepared. Because the responsibility could be either the user or the host.
How many of you are actually thinking of being pop-up users? Okay, there you go. And then the other half are probably you own property, or you're thinking of leasing out properties to the pop-up users, right? So we'll talk about your stuff in a little bit. Let's finish up the prohibited activities for pop-up users, right? What are the things that you can't do as a licensed pop-up user? You cannot engage in the business of selling liquor or tobacco, or operating a public place of amusement, or providing services licensed by the city or state, okay? So basically, you can only do the things that you're licensed for. If we have a separate business license for that, you need to obtain that business license in order for you to conduct such business, okay? So as a pop-up user, either a retailer or pop-up food, you cannot, again, repeat, you cannot sell liquor, you cannot sell tobacco. You can't, you can't be operating a dance place, a nightclub. And then any other licenses that are, any other business activities that require a business license. Also, the pop-up user license does not allow for any business activity that requires one or more, as I mentioned, specific licenses, okay? So, again, you can only do the things that I mentioned to you. Either sell retail goods, or if you're gonna be selling food, nothing else. Yes?
What's an example of those services that are part of a license? Because I'm here for the retail one, it says that it can be to sell like merchandise or provision of service.
Right, so those provision of services is related to the retail item that you're selling. But for anybody, say for example, that are gonna be doing like a salon, there's a specific license for that. And anybody else are conducting massage establishments, right? There's no pop-up massage places, okay? So those are restricted. Additional restrictions for pop-up food establishment users. Tier 2 and Tier 3 pop-up users may not operate in the same location for a period in excess of 90 days within a 365-day period. You may also not cater foods from the licensed pop-up food establishment location. You may also not operate a food establishment in a non-stationary structure or vehicle of any type, whether mobile or non-mobile, or a building or portion of a building that is unsafe or unsuitable for the use of Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3 pop-up food establishment. Okay, and you may not operate a pop-up food establishment in a private home or any room used as sleeping or living quarters. Okay, so that encapsulates the things that you should be mindful of as a licensee, because if you do conduct any of such, then you may get ticketed. Okay. As a pop-up user, because you're popping up from place to place, it is incumbent upon you to keep records of the places that you popped into. Okay? There is, as being a licensee, a requirement that you do keep these records. And what do these records entail? Basically, you must have a written record containing the following information: the address of the premises, the name of the owner or lessee of the premises, the date and time of operation at the establishment, and then you should have a copy of all agreements entered by you with the owner or lessee. And then if you discontinue or terminate your agreement with the lessee, then you should have a record of the date then when you did so. And then if the licensee operates a Tier 3 pop-up food establishment at the premises, then the name of the person holding a valid City of Chicago food sanitation certificate, because that is a requirement, and that's something that Ms. Butler is going to be talking about later on. Now, all this information, again, is on the fact sheet, so you don't have to try to write it down or memorize it, but it's all there. So that pretty much covers the pop-up user licenses. So now what we're going to talk about are pop-up host licenses, okay? So what these are essentially is these establishments will, whoever is licensed as such, can allow anybody whose license is appropriately as a pop-up user can utilize that space. So there are two different host license types. There's the pop-up food establishment host Tier 2, and the other one is the Tier 3. So again, you will select the appropriate license depending on what you plan to do in terms of activities or in what's allowed. So the holder of a Tier 2 host license is authorized to allow pop-up food establishment user Tier 1 and Tier 2. So as you'll notice, as the tiers go up, you are allowed to allow the accommodating pop-up users tiers and a number less, right? So therefore, the Tier 1 and Tier 2 license holders are allowed to operate in the Tier 2 establishment. Persons holding a Tier 2 pop-up food establishment host license has to equip the premises or ensure that the premises is equipped appropriately by the user, with a hand sink, because that's what's required for a Tier 2, as mentioned by Ms. Butler, which may be portable, by the way. And then sufficient time and temperature control equipment to ensure that basically the hot foods stay hot in the right temperatures and the cold food stay in the proper cold temperatures. Such equipment must conform to the Department of Health's code of rules. And then also, you've got to ensure that no Tier 2 pop-up food establishment user licensee operates at your host location for a period in excess of 90 days within any 365-day period. So that is your responsibility as the host, to keep track of how often the users are popping up and how long they've been using it. Because basically there is that limitation of 90 days per year. Keep in mind that the shared kitchen operator and shared kitchen supplemental licensees are actually exempt from having to obtain this business license. So therefore, anybody who's currently licensed as a shared kitchen, or somebody who has a retail food license and has the supplemental shared kitchen license can already host tier 1s and tier 2 pop-up users. All they need to do, if anybody's licensed with those 2 specific licenses already, is come in and let our business consultants know so that we can add that business activity into your license certificate. So if you are interested in obtaining the pop-up food establishment host tier 2 license, the fee for that is $150 and the license term is for 1 year. So, and if you're not familiar with license terms, essentially, you can only operate legally within the time frame of the term. If you want to continue conducting business, then all you would need to do is renew your business license. So essentially, you'll need to take care of that prior to continuing services. And if your license is going to be expiring, you'll be receiving notice of that. We will remind you that your license is expiring, and therefore you should renew it if you wish to continue conducting business. Now, the other host license is the Tier 3 host license, the Pop-Up Food Establishment Host Tier 3. The holder of the Tier 3 host license is authorized to allow Pop-Up Food Establishment Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 license holders to operate at that location. So therefore, in the instance in the question earlier, whose responsibility is it again to find out if the place is licensed accordingly? Well, again, responsibility goes both ways. The host needs to make sure that the user has the right business license, and then conversely, the user needs to know that the host has the right license. Persons holding a Tier 3 host license must equip the licensed premises or ensure that the pop-up food establishment user equips the licensed premises with all the equipment required in restaurants per the Department of Health standards. Okay? So again, with your question earlier, who's responsible for making sure that the equipment is there? It is incumbent upon you to know what's in your contract. So if you agree that you will supply it, then you need to make sure that you supply the proper equipment as a user. However, most likely, or it should be, that the host should have that equipment already, especially when it's going to be a pop-up Tier 3. Also, you must ensure that no Tier 2 or Tier 3, pop-up food establishment user licensee operates at the location in excess of 90 days. Again, there's that limitation. The license fee for a Tier 3 is $150 for 1 year. And again, the shared kitchen licensees and shared kitchen supplemental licensees are exempt from having to obtain this business license. They can already host the pop-up users and their establishments. Just like the pop-up users business license application requirements, same thing applies to the host. Okay? Because what I mentioned earlier applies to all licensees, being that if you're going to apply, you need to complete a BIS form. All owners of the establishment must provide us with a government-issued photo ID that is current. Provide us with your business identification numbers or registration numbers. Resolve any debts that you may have with the city. And what's different with this, though, is that as a host, because this is a permanent structure, this is a building, and therefore there will be zoning review that's required. So the business location address that is provided in the license application will be reviewed by our zoning representative. And upon approval, then you may continue to apply for the license. Depending if the location is in the appropriate zone, the zoning representatives will let the applicant know whether or not you can obtain the license. And know that we would never charge you for the license fee unless we know that we can provide you with the business license. That's why we typically, in the license process, have the collection of the license fee at the end of the process when we know that we can provide you with the business license. So again, as part of the license application for a pop-up host license, know that that's part of the licensing process. Is that as you meet with a business consultant and they take in your business information, then there will be a zoning review conducted to ensure that the host location is zoned appropriately. Once that zoning representative approves it, then you continue with your licensing process by providing any other required documentation.
So the host needs the license
Mhm.
also.
Correct.
And they have, how much is the fee?
Oh. It was on the previous
Okay.
slide.
Okay, okay.
$150 for a 1-year term for the
Okay.
tier 3, right? And for the tier 2, it's $150 as well. Is that right?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There was a mistype there. The tier 2, yes, tier 2 is 150, and the tier 3 is 330. I apologize for that.
I think it's on the back of the handout as well.
Yeah, it's on the hunt.
Right,
Thank
so
you.
if someone wants to serve food out of your place, then I have to pay $330
As a host,
as host.
because you are conducting business as well, and your business is leasing out your space, your commercial space, to anybody that is licensed appropriately. So you need a license to be able to do so, and the user who comes in, you need to check to make sure that they've got their license as well, because you are not allowed to have anybody utilize your space if they're not licensed accordingly.
So
Okay?
if you want to only host retail businesses, do you not need a pop-up host?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Only the user would need to have the license then?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Correct. All right, so when do you not need a host license?
Sorry.
I'll pay you later. Okay. Great cue. So, no person may engage in the business of pop-up food establishment host without first having obtained a pop-up food establishment host license. However, a pop-up food establishment host license is not required if the owner or lessee of the building or premises housing the pop-up food establishment holds either A, you already have a valid shared kitchen operator license, or B, you have a valid retail food establishment license and a shared kitchen supplemental license. Or the owner or lessee of the building or premises housing the pop-up food establishment only allows Tier 1 pop-up food establishment users to operate in such building or premises. And that should also include the retail too. And then the premises are, the premises are a private residence and the occupant hires a chef to prepare or serve food within that residence for the occupant's own consumption or for consumption by the occupant's invited guests. But we wouldn't license you there anyway because it's a residential place. So those are the exceptions.
Occupants invited a guest. Hey,
Uh,
like you get these emails like where chefs will come to somebody's house and you pay $100 and he comes and does all this. That's pop-up?
That is not a licensed activity.
It is not. Okay. Good.
Okay?
So then, just to clarify, if I have a retail food establishment license and shared kitchen supplemental, then I would just need to add the activity for host tier 2 or 3?
Correct.
Okay.
Just come on in to the Small Business Center and let one of our business consultants know. Actually, we have a senior supervising business consultant here who can help answer your questions after our Q&A if you have any questions regarding if you're already licensed and what you need to do. Okay? All right. And now, let us talk about the health requirements for the host.
So I think I'm gonna talk about host this time. Okay. So does anybody know where I'm not gonna talk about tier 1? Remember tier 1? Does anybody know?
Retail.
Because it's retail
Packaged
and packaged foods only. Do we inspect those places? No.
Chips and juice.
So if you have, the tier 1 is just gonna be your chips and juice. You get chips in small bags. It's your candy store, your local candy store where everything is prepackaged. You get it from the manufacturer that way, you sell it that way. That makes sense? That's gonna be your tier 1. So we won't talk about that because there's no additional requirements for that. So we're just gonna talk about the tier 2s and the tier 3 for hosts. Is that okay? All right, so the tier 2, I kind of talked about a little bit when I kind of integrated that with the user, meaning that the tier 2, if this room is your space that you own and a tier 2 wants to be in this space, they also must have a hand sink if they have any open food products, right? So as the host, you can be responsible for providing that hand sink. And if they're having hot or cold foods, then you can be responsible for providing that hot or cold holding units. You can be responsible for that. If you're a tier 3, we're talking full-blown restaurant. So restaurants often fail and they end up with empty restaurants, right? So if you own that restaurant and you want to lease that space to a tier 3 user, this is going to be your full-blown restaurant. They have to comply with, that space has to comply with all parts of the food code. So that's 3 compartment sinks, hand sinks, service sinks, hot holding equipment, everything, logbooks, all of the requirements. That makes sense? So the difference between the 2s and the 3s? Okay. As part of that application process, you have to meet with our consultant. The consultant is here at BACP. We try to make it easy, one-stop shop. So you come here, you're gonna have a consultation with Anna Nelson. She is our liaison here. And when you meet with her, she's going to ask you to bring a floor plan. Why is she going to ask that? Because we need to know what you're going to provide, right? And the hand sink, as Ed said, can also be a temporary hand sink, a self-contained hand sink, but you have to get approval for that. Otherwise, it's got to be hard plumbed. Restrooms. The people that work there have to be able to go to the bathroom, so that has to be somewhere on the drawing. Approved equipment, pest control, and garbage. So if you are a tier 3, those are the things that the pest control and the garbage are things that you must provide, and restrooms, because a user can't bring a restroom with them. On-site inspections for tier 3, you're subject to inspection, same as they would otherwise because it is a full restaurant, right? Tier 2, we reserve the right to inspect based on the product, the location, etc., as we kind of talked about before. And sometimes because we have a couple that have been approved, so those tier 2s, we are waiting for them to have a user because it doesn't make sense to go and inspect an empty box, right? An empty vanilla box. So we'll wait till the user is in. Questions about that so far? All right. So the pop-up host must ensure that the user has a pop-up user license. You are, as we talked about, jointly responsible for the equipment based on what you agree to provide and the user agrees to provide. And the one thing about having the inspections is people always want to know who gets the ticket. And so the ticket goes to the person or entity that is responsible for providing that piece of equipment. So you, as a tier 3, you're responsible for garbage. So that garbage is going to go to that host, even if that host is not there. Guess what happens if you're not there and you have overflowing garbage cans? You get a ticket in the mail, exactly. And then you can fight it at administrative hearings, but you get a citation in the mail if you're responsible for providing that. You're also responsible as a host for ensuring that you keep good records. So all of the users that are going to be there, you need to know user number 1 was there from this date to this date, user number 2 was there, user number 3, so that you have that, and it all has to be available for inspection. So you got to come up with a system so that when the sanitarian comes in to do an inspection, they're going to ask the user, whomever is there, for the records, and they have to have access to those records. And then you have to notify us if you're going to do any major changing in equipment. So for example, if you're a host and you're going to host your location to a pizza place, and the pizza place is going to be there for 30 days, and then after that you're going to change and you're going to host the ice cream place, the requirements are going to be different, right? So if you have to do major changes in equipment, we just ask that you let us know and we'll add that information. Also, at any given time, you can have multiple pop-ups in the same location. So if you have multiple, you just cannot exceed what your establishment can safely hold. So you can't have 50 people in there being a pop-up and you have 1 refrigerator. That won't work. So you cannot allow your capacity to be exceeded by the number of users.
So do you like, do the host tell you what their square footage is, and then you say, okay, if you get a license, this is the maximum amount of people that are allowed in your space?
So if we have a very small space and we now have recognized that we have letters of intent for 3 users to be in there at the same time, we're going to do an inspection because we need to know how that's working. It could be that somebody does breakfast, somebody does lunch, and somebody does dinner, and they're not there at the same time, and that makes sense. Or 2 of them are there, one is cooking and one is doing, a tier 2 activity. So it depends on, it could be. So there's like no hard rule. It really just depends on how the space is being used and how many users are there. Okay. Questions?
All right, and like I said, if you, we'll take care of the question in a Q&A, unless you want. You got a quick question, you said? Yeah, we'll take care of it in a Q&A, okay? Ms. Butler will be here. She's not going anywhere. We're not letting her. So, as a host, just like the user, you too have record keeping requirements, which are pretty similar to essentially, you have to, it's on in the flip side of it, obviously. You'll have to keep a list of all the pop-up establishment users that operate in your host location, and for each user, a copy of their menu approved by the Department of Health. A list setting forth the dates and times when they operated at the space. If a Tier 3 pop-up food establishment user operates at a licensed location, then the name of the persons holding the valid City of Chicago Food Service Sanitation Certificate issued by the Department of Health. And then a copy of all the agreements entered into by the pop-up food establishment host with each pop-up food establishment user. And then if the pop-up food establishment user discontinues or ends or terminates their contract, then let us know when that happened. So again, this will allow us to, if in case of an emergency, just as was mentioned by Ms. Butler, in terms of a foodborne illness, then when we need to do research, this is what allows us and helps us to kind of find out what happened. So to summarize, because we've covered a lot right now, to go back first about the pop-up user licenses, the 4 different types. First and foremost, you have the pop-up retail user, and this essentially is the sale of merchandise at a fixed indoor retail space. You may, if you are a pop-up retail user, pop up in any non-manufacturing, non-residential location. Those places do not need a business license to host you. You just need to have the appropriate permission to be able to utilize their space. You can't just pop up and decide to just start selling merchandise. You need to have a permission from the owner or leasee. The pop-up retail user has different terms and fees, as was mentioned before. So depending on how long you think that you'll be operating at a certain space, if it's for just 5 days, then it's for $25. If it's 30 days, then it's $50. 90 days is $75. 180 days is $100, and a 1-year license is $150. And again, all that is in the fact sheet that we provided for you. The next type of pop-up user license is the Tier 2 food establishment user pop-up license. And essentially, this allows the licensee to provide or sell non-perishable food, only that is obviously is commercially prepackaged in a properly licensed establishment. Again, the Tier 1 pop-up user food establishment user may pop up in any non-manufacturing, non-residential location. That's the same thing as the retail user, because again, you're not selling anything beyond what is noted as a requirement of the license. And the license terms and fees is similar to the retail user. Then the third type of pop-up user license is the pop-up food establishment user Tier 2. And that allows the licensee to sell perishable and non-perishable foods, hot or cold, prepackaged food that has been prepared and packaged and stored off-site. The licensee, the Tier 2 licensee, may pop up in a licensed establishment holding a Tier 2 or Tier 3 pop-up establishment host license. Or if they have a retail food with a shared kitchen supplemental license, or they're a shared kitchen operator. So those are the three types of establishment that a pop-up food establishment user Tier 2 may be able to pop into. Okay? And the license terms for that Tier 2 is either a 5-day license for $50, 30-day license for $100, and a 90-day license for $150. And last pop-up user license that we discussed is the pop-up food establishment user Tier 3. Excuse the graphic. The sale of perishable, non-perishable, hot and cold food prepared on site at the pop-up food establishment is what's allowed for this licensee. So essentially operating like a restaurant. May pop up in a licensed establishment holding a Tier 3 pop-up host license, or again, a retail food with a shared kitchen supplemental license, or a shared kitchen operator. Those are the types of establishments, or more specifically hosts, that a Tier 3 can pop into. Pop-up user Tier 3. The fee is similar to the Tier 2 license. Any questions about the pop-up user license? Okay? Oh, yes.
So I'm focusing on the retail. So the year length is essentially 6 locations of a 5-day length. So if I want to, and I don't, let's say I know for a full year, I'm hopefully, the success of the business, I'm going to be doing multiple pop-ups.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't make sense for me to buy multiple licenses, even if I'm only going to be 1 day at each spot.
Mm-hmm.
I could buy the year and it'll cover me at whatever spot I'm going to be at, right?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Yep. So it all depends. There are those who are just, tepidly testing the market.
Right, then you go with the
And then you
5-day.
just go with the 5-day because you're just trying something out. But if you've already established yourself and you know that you'll be utilizing it for a year, then it would behoove you to get the right license. It's more cost effective. Yes.
Would the 90 days in one location apply to that?
Not to the retail, only for the Tier 2 and Tier 3. Yes.
So if you have a food user license and you operate for 90 days in a location and you like it, you've built up your clientele, and you close for 1 day and then restart for another 90 days in the same location?
No, not within, you have 90 days in a 365-day period
In that location.
from that location.
In that location?
Mm-hmm. You cannot be in the same place because you're almost as if then a permanent establishment. So the whole point of that is so that, and the whole point of the pop-up is to test market, really, right? Beyond that, you really should get a real establishment, retail food license. Not a real, and this is a real license, but essentially a full-blown license with a 2-year term. Yes.
And do any of the food user licenses, are they allowed for outdoor use?
No.
You can't go to a park or?
No. Now, do keep in mind that when you say park, that is the realm of it's a park district. Thank you. So you need to.
Or like a vacant lot that you.
Vacant lots aren't allowed. No.
You can't go outside for food.
Nope.
There is a permit for special events
Mhm.
that allows for you to prepare food outside, but it has to be part of a special event.
So that would be like food festival, is that?
Correct.
Or
Correct.
For example, I wanted to put in a real thing that we see in Chicago, so
Mhm.
what's the classification of the food festival? Are they pop-up license or?
No.
No, they're not.
Those are special events, and they're
Yep.
handled through Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events.
Mm-hmm.
There's a license type for that.
No. Nope. It's a special event, so you need to get the proper special event permits, and that's ongoing. As with any street festival that you see right now, they go through DCASE and obtain us.
There are church museums that they have in group spaces instead of hostels, possibly hostels.
Right, so there are multiple things that we need to go through there. Maybe we should talk offline with that, because I think we've discussed this before. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Is there gonna be any is the city gonna start any type of enforcement? Because as I think through my mind, like in my neighborhood, we've been doing all kinds of stuff since the beginning of time. You pull out a grill somewhere,
Mhm.
snowballs, you go to Bud Building there, everybody cooking and selling stuff. These people ain't got no licenses. But then we eat it, I like it. You know?
The licenses are now effective, and therefore enforcement
Well,
is
I won't
coming.
let them do it on my property now because the host can might get a ticket or get in trouble if you let people come,
Mhm.
you're saying and cook on your lot and sell food or in your
Mhm.
place. Then they
Mhm.
might look at the person and say, well, what are you doing?
Hmm. Yes, so there will be enforcement, obviously, as with any of our other business licenses. So especially now that these licenses are in effect,
Ball game, they come with the wagon grill and.
we've seen them all. We've seen them all.
And we enjoy it.
And yes, and they will be suggested to obtain the proper licenses and stop conducting that type of business without the proper license. Okay? You know what? Let me just finish the host and then we can open it up, okay? Unless.
If you go to a retail establishment that already has a retail license,
Mm-hmm.
the only thing you have to do is get their permission, get a contract with them,
Mm-hmm.
and then do you need to then get your license to set up your pop-up in your location? Or just the permission?
No, I'm sorry. You are a user and you're going to a retail establishment that has their license. In order for you to utilize their spot as a pop-up retail user, you need to get your license.
And do I need a contract with them or their permission?
Yes, yes, you need your permission. Whatever, it's their choice. Whatever they decide to do with allowing you officially to utilize their space. Because obviously there's going to be, business ramifications in terms of utilizing their space, right? So therefore, you need to probably have a contract. I don't think any business will just allow you to pop in and not have a contract and have not discuss any liabilities with you, right? So, standard operating procedures.
Is the city gonna have like a list of like where the host can put their places on a list or something? So you can say, okay, I can come to my place and you can do tier 1, 2, or you can come to her place and do 1, 2, 3.
It's a good question. Let me take care of the host licenses, and then we'll talk about that.
Okay.
Okay. So let me do a recap of the host licenses. As a reminder again, pop-up retail users and pop-up food establishment user tier 1s. There is no business license needed to host them. Okay. They just need to be in a non-manufacturing, non-residential location. For the tier 2, that's the pop-up food establishment host tier 2. They may rent, lease, or otherwise make space available to pop-up food establishment user tier 1 and tier 2 license holders only. They must, so therefore you're not allowed, if you are a host tier 2, you're not allowed to host a tier 3 user. Make sense? All right. You must equip the licensed premises or ensure that the pop-up food establishment user equips the licensed premises properly. And then also must ensure that no tier 2 pop-up food establishment user operates at the licensed location within 90 days, greater than 90 days. And then with a tier 3, again, may rent or lease space, otherwise make the space available for the pop-up food establishment user tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. So if you, as a host, want to be able to host all types of users, you got to get the tier 3 pop-up food establishment host license. You must obviously equip the licensed premises, or your user will equip it appropriately. And you got to make sure again that nobody exceeds the 90-day limit. Okay? And you all know what the fees are already. So how do you apply? There are multiple ways to apply, or 2 ways to apply for a business license. It's online or in person. However, pop-up licenses only are currently available in person. So you need to go to room 800 and meet with a business consultant and essentially come prepared with your documentation so you only make one trip, right? If you need to know basically what are required, it's listed, as I mentioned, in your fact sheets. And then also too, the business consultants get rather busy. So it would behoove you to make an appointment so that you don't wait too long. But essentially, it is here at City Hall at 121 North LaSalle Street, room 800. Intake hours is from 8:30 to 4:30. And please call 312-74-GO-BIZ. That's 312-744-6249. That's our business contact center to make an appointment to meet with a business consultant. And again, meeting with them is free of charge. You can meet with them at any time. There are various resources for you. Again, these fact sheets are essential, so please pick it up if you haven't picked it up already, and they are available on our dedicated webpage. And also, too, any of these handouts that we have out here, it would behoove you to pick them up because they will assist you in, if you haven't formulated your business already and or want to learn to be a better entrepreneur or a better business owner. There are free workshops and assistance from our non-profit business partners who can assist you. So there are plenty of resources available. And one of them also, too, as I mentioned in the introduction, are our neighborhood business development centers. What are they? They're basically business support organizations that are located throughout the city of Chicago, which we fund. Those being like your chambers of commerce and, again, business support organizations. So that if you have any questions or need any assistance in either registering your business or, again, attend some workshops to be a better business person, or you need capital. So there are those neighborhood business development centers that are called small business opportunity centers that will help you try to obtain capital, either get you loan ready if that's what you want to do, or find you some other means of obtaining some startup capital. You can find all of them. They're listed on our website at cityofchicago.org/NBDC. Okay? I think that covers most of it, and we're now going to open up the floor up for any questions. And yes, sir.
You know, insurance.
There isn't any insurance requirement to obtain.
Host for the owner.
We don't require it in order for you to obtain your license. But it would behoove you as a business owner to.
Can I deny someone who's want to come in and, you know, is going to have insurance?
Whatever you put on your agreement is your choice. Yes.
For the user license, when does it become active? The day you receive that license or the day you step foot and do business and set up business?
Good question. Your license is active once we give it to you.
So if you have a 5-day license, then it behooves you to.
Get the ball rolling. Yep, start using it. Yes.
Can you be a pop-up host if you don't own the location that you're leasing?
Correct. You can do that as long as you need to obtain, the rightful agreement with the property owner. Yes.
Since you guys have been doing it for a while, any curiosity as to how much the hosts are charging the users?
We
No.
only have two that I'm aware of, so I don't know.
Yeah, we don't have that information. And to go back to somebody had a question earlier about, is there a listing of hosts, right? We were thinking of putting one together, but typically the market typically takes care of that, and some innovative individual will probably put together.
Make a Facebook page.
Because that's the same thing that happened for food trucks.
I was gonna say,
We were
on
we
the data portal,
correct.
and if you look for search pop-up in the business licenses, it'll pull everybody that has that activity.
So that way.
We
That license type, yes, right.
yes.
That portal's right next to you.
Okay.
Blue.
The blue one. Thank you. It wasn't blue before. Oh, because this is what I was used to. So this handout will help you be aware of our data portal and how to use it. You can search any business licensed entity in the city of Chicago. All licensed businesses are listed in the data portal. So therefore, if you want to find out who has the right license to be able to host you as a user, just type in the filter what you want to look for. So you want to look for a licensed host, tier 3. Select that as a search, and it will pop up all the licensed businesses who have the appropriate license. Okay? Let's go to the back, because I haven't been back there.
Okay, this one is more along the lines of pop-up retail.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm hosting outdoor activities, that's outdoor classes, and I want to invite other folks with pop-up user licenses, would I have to go through the route of maybe the pop-up host, or would, let's just say I was doing it at the park district?
Sure. May I? Because you're starting to build up there. So let me answer the first part. First and foremost, we will not license you at an outdoor space. Okay? For any of the pop-up licenses. The pop-up user retail is for indoor only. I know it does say some outdoor, but that's only for those seasonal activities like the pumpkin patch and the Christmas trees. We don't license for any other pop-up activities outdoors. It has to be in an indoor place.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, so if my permit covers me to do outdoor activities,
What permit, sir?
maybe with the park district, if I get a permit to do something at the park district,
Mm-hmm.
how would I go about inviting or having vendors or pop-ups come to that event?
So, number one, in order for you to host something at the park district, you need to obtain the appropriate permit. But what they require you to do there is on their purview. It's separate from us.
Okay.
Okay? So they may not require you to get a pop-up license. Because number one, we wouldn't license you at the park district. We won't do that. So how you invite them, social media, and any other standard marketing means.
Got it.
Okay? Yes.
What's the turnaround to receive, like, for a retail pop-up? Like, if I come in and I apply and give all my
Mhm.
information, is it like same day, here you go?
Assuming that you have everything, all of the required documentation, yes.
It hasn't
Standard
happened. Yeah,
30, 45 minutes turnaround time?
Once you share with them, so probably an hour.
like,
Probably an
something
hour.
that, like, we'll do it, process it, throw it in the mail for you, and you'll get it 2 weeks later?
No, because, no, yeah. No, it's a valid question. So yeah, as you apply and provide the appropriate information, we will, after you pay for your license fee, either provide you with a license certificate, depending on which license you're getting, or you get a badge. So then what we'll do is we'll send you down to city clerk, they'll take a picture, and then we'll print the card out, and you'll get it there. Yes.
To that point, again, from a retail standpoint, that's part of part of the business plan. What if I don't know the location of my first pop-up, but I want to be ready to go?
Mhm.
To pop to a potential location and said, hey, we could have you here tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Friday night, I don't know. You said that what's required to get a pop-up license is an address of where you're going to pop up at. If you have a year license, you can be popping up at 20, let's say 100 places for
Sure.
put that out in the universe. That's going to happen. So how does that work?
So we don't actually require an address where you're going to be.
Okay.
For tier ones, we don't, for tier ones and for retail.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Right, for
retail.
tier
Right.
twos and tier threes, which are food related, we do, because we need to know that you're going into a place that's safe for food to be prepared or served.
Okay. Anybody on this side? 'Cause I've been on the left side for a bit. Yes.
So this license is strictly for food and not for services. So say you wanted to go into a location and provide a service,
Mhm.
I would have to get a different license, right?
Correct.
Okay, so what license is that?
Depending on what type of service, we have different business licenses. Okay, and so what you do is you talk to Esau, and he'll let you know what business license you'll need depending on the services that you're offering. Okay? Oh, by the way, for anybody who's an organizer of pop-up events, you also need to obtain the appropriate license for that. So the example that the gentleman was saying, although it wasn't it doesn't apply because he's planning on to do it in a park district. But if in an actual legitimate and enclosed space, there's a building that's in the right zone, and you want to host an event, you as an organizer need to have the appropriate user license. Okay? Yes.
To tag on to the earlier question, can a user and a host be the same person? So if you have a lease and you're not ready to open, you're waiting for your build out, can you host yourself and also be the user? And then if so, a second question is what conditions which wasn't just in general, what conditions do these places have to be? Like, can they be raw spaces? Can they be restaurants that closed a year ago but it's in your neighborhood and you want to use it? Like, what level does it have to have HVAC, ADA? Does it have to look nice? Does it have to be anything beyond clean? You know what I mean?
I'm gonna let you take the first part of the question, or Esau maybe. Can you be a host and a user at the same time? I don't know that answer. I don't know why you would need to be, but.
Well, like if you had a lease and it's the middle of winter and you're not ready and you want to host yourself for what your future business is going to be.
Where are you gonna be hosting yourself? That's
At your like you have a lease and you're waiting for a building permit or you're waiting to acquire funding or you're just waiting for whatever reason with your architectural drawings. Can you host yourself for what your future business is going to be to start marketing?
Well, here's the thing. First, you gotta make sure that the building will meet requirements for health to make sure that you're gonna be able to operate whatever you're planning to do. Are you gonna be a tier?
Well, but if you
Two,
were like
tier three.
well, if you were just going to be like a tier 2, tier 1 or tier 2, then you just needed the same.
Okay.
Couldn't it? And that was
As
the
long as
second
it's-
question. What does the space have to be
Well,
like?
if you're gonna get the host license, you gotta make sure that this property is zoned for it, right? And then the other thing is gotta make sure that the actual property is in a safe condition that individuals can be occupying the space.
Basically, all
So there's all
everything-
these building violations that it becomes like safety issue, of course not.
Right, but only to the extent that you need the requirements which are listed here. So then,
Well, you
if it's a, if
you
it's,
guys prefer-
Right. So I'm sorry.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. So the licensing question I cannot address,
Yeah.
all right, because I don't have the answer for that and I'm kind of confused about the question. Now, in terms of the space,
Right.
the space must be building approved. So buildings has to approve the space for occupancy. So you must have an occupancy permit, whatever that means. Then what does the space look like for preparing food inside that space as a tier 2? At minimum, if you have a user that is going to be having hot food or cold food, they have to have the means to hold it hot and or cold.
Okay.
And you need a hand sink and you need a restroom, okay?
Okay.
So if you could take this room as a tier 2 and you put the appropriate equipment in it and have an adjacent bathroom, then this could be a room that could be used for a tier 2. A tier 3 is going to be a fully functioning restaurant. So
Right.
it is going to be a vacant restaurant. The vacant Chili's went out of business.
Right.
You now own the Chili's building and you want to put a user in there and you have to meet all of the requirements of the food code. So 3 compartment sink, hand sink, plumbing, ventilation, all of that. You have to meet all of the food code requirements.
So basically, everything has to be up to standard.
Yes.
Correct.
That's
Right.
what I see.
Yeah. There's no changes to the standards.
but tier 2, it doesn't say that. It just says the same. It doesn't
Right,
really
so
say
tier-
that. So like if it's your space. and
It's you cannot have a
your-
space where the people that are occupying the space can't go to the bathroom. It won't pass buildings. It won't. You must have a restroom for the people that are in it so that they can go to the restroom.
Everything has to be up to standard.
Right, so that won't pass buildings, you won't get an occupancy permit. So the building the food code requirement is different for tier 3 because if you have eating on premises, et cetera, there's a number of bathrooms related. But for tier 2, you must meet the building code and occupancy. In order to get occupancy, you must have a restroom for the people that are there.
Even if you're a person who are applying for something that's not up to standards, through you guys, it's gonna get rejected because everything is not up to standards.
Yes, so you have to get your building, it has to be safe, as I was saying, it's gotta be safe for occupancy.
Okay.
For those 5-day licenses, does it have to be 5 continuous days? Can it be like 5 Mondays?
No.
Okay.
It's 5 continuous. Yes. Yes.
So kind of going, I guess, into the arts, I see something in here that says art fairs under trade show for exhibition. does that include like a gallery pop-up or like an art pop-up? Would that count under retail or is that something different?
You will have to get a specific license. Even if you're doing a pop-up for art gallery, you have to get the license itself will be the limited business license. And you got the limited business license,
Okay.
and you will have to meet zoning requirements for that space.
So it would be the what?
It's a limited business license.
Okay.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions? All right, well, we want to thank you for coming, and wish you good luck with your businesses, excuse me, and you can come up if you have any questions, any specific questions with any of our experts here. Thank you.